Well, what can we do then if we are finding ourselves worrying about stuff all the time? What are some of the general principles to help us stop worrying as much?
Okay, and I'll come back a little later too to some of the specific strategies that we can do with worrisome thoughts, which involve some kind of distancing or stepping back from them. But as you say, the general principles, one of the first things is we don't have to over-control our thinking or even our worry. Like accepting some level of intrusive thoughts or some level of distracting thoughts is fair enough, especially at times of greater stress. Like at the moment with many people having experienced being in lockdown, concerns about COVID, concerns about finances, work, it's normal to have a number of things to be concerned about and have some worries about. So it's not looking to over-control that, but maybe sometimes letting some of those concerns be in the background like kind of white noise. At times it might be there more than usual, but not have to over-control it, accepting some of it being there. Also, people can sometimes get caught up in thinking of their worries uncontrollable or really out of control and dangerous. But basically, it's not dangerous, it's uncomfortable rather than dangerous. It's distracting or disruptive rather than dangerous, or unsettling rather than dangerous. And actually, there's some things that people can sometimes do if they do see their worry as uncontrollable. One strategy is to look to at least delay it and think, for example, well, I'm going to leave it till 3 o'clock today. In the meantime, I'm getting on with what I'm doing now, but at 3 o'clock, I'll set aside 15 minutes and I'll let myself think over my worries about such and such a situation rather than now. And even if someone finds that they can delay it or postpone their worrying for a little bit of time, it shows it's not completely uncontrollable. Or otherwise, a more dramatic strategy is for the person to allow themselves to see if they can worry themselves mad, so to speak. Okay, let the worry be uncontrollable. Go to town on your worry. Let it be as maximum as possible. Worry yourself to become psychotic even. See how that goes. And then when people allow themselves to engage in this rampant worry, often after 5 minutes or so, people realise, look, there's something a bit futile about this. It does seem a little bit ridiculous or over the top or catastrophic kind of thing. So funnily enough, when people look to completely let go of control, sometimes they find, paradoxically, they're a little less concerned about it. But the main strategies involve different ways of distancing ourselves from our thoughts.
I can imagine that can be quite a tough thing to do in many ways, and particularly when we're worried about something, it can seem like that situation is all-encompassing in many ways. So do you have any strategies to help us distance ourselves from our thoughts in that way?
There are a number of things that can work really well that way, and it's a bit like a menu. I'll mention a few things on a menu that people find helpful. And they all relate to this idea of stepping back from our thoughts, our worrisome thoughts. And one example is saying to ourselves, I'm having the thought that. So, for example, a person thinks, I'm going to lose my job. If the person pauses and steps back and thinks, I'm having the thought that I'm going to lose my job, it just gives you a little bit extra distance. And actually, I can mention I heard from someone recently who applied that technique with some obsessive compulsive thinking. For example, someone could think, I'm contaminated by touching that. And the person can say to themselves, I'm having the thought that I'm contaminated by touching that. It just takes you back from the situation, allows for more objectivity to come in. Another thing that a person can do is turn the verbal thought into visual imagery, like dark storm clouds, and allow the worrisome thoughts to come and then move on, like dark storm clouds coming into your view and moving on. And I know a person with schizophrenia uses that very well for some delusional thoughts, very concerning, disruptive, delusional thoughts, but he's able to think of them like storm clouds and allow them to move on and redirect his attention to whatever else he's doing at the time. It doesn't have to work perfectly, but it gives more distance. There's a classic one that we use in hypnosis, which is for the person to imagine the particular thoughts as sitting on leaves on a stream, and let the leaves gently flow down the stream and out of view, taking the worrisome thought with them. So let that picture be there, and it's letting go of the thought with that visual image. Sometimes we can change the thought into something which seems a bit silly by making it into a chipmunk voice, such as a parent who's concerned about whether they're going to be able to manage with homeschooling continuing on. And they might think to themselves, I'm not going to be able to handle homeschooling. I'm not going to be able to handle homeschooling. I'm not going to be able to handle homeschooling. Like after a while, it starts to sound a little bit ridiculous and it leads you to step back a bit from the situation. But another standard technique is writing down our thoughts or concerns or worries on a page. Maybe writing a paragraph about, I'm really concerned about such and such happening. It might be something with the home or finances or whatever, and writing out a paragraph on that, maybe even adding a prediction of how likely you think it is a particular bad outcome might happen and how bad that would be. Because then you can look back at it about a week later and you might have revised what your estimates are. And that helps you step back and realise that some of these things are subjective, but over a period of time we might see them a little bit differently. It's not as though our concerns are stuck in just the same way the whole time. And so anything else that helps people step back from a situation can help. Sometimes it might even be discussing it with a friend or family member. That can help to get a concern out and then check how realistic that we're being with that. And that can be a way of drawing on support with a particular issue, so long as we don't just get caught up in a pattern of looking for reassurance. Because if we're looking for reassurance and we're saying things to be reassured again and again and again, that's also one of those patterns of avoidance. So it's whether we're actually engaging with stepping back, looking to be realistic, looking at the likelihood something bad will happen, how bad it would be, but using these distancing techniques in the meantime, the visual image of the clouds passing or leaves on a stream. I'm having the thought that people even with very disruptive thoughts can find some relief from those techniques.